If you dip your toes into the literary world these days, you'll likely hear the term sensitivity reader. And if you're working on a book, it might sound really intimidating to have someone read your work for sensitive content. And if you're not working on a book, then you might have no idea what I'm talking about. Either way, I am here to help allay your nerves and explain what's going on. I recently finished the entire sensitivity reader process on my new book, and I'm here to take you through it step by step. How I found my sensitivity reader, what the process was like, how much it cost, and what the result was. And then I'm going to plug the pre-order for my new book. Link in the description. Your first question is probably, what is a sensitivity reader? Also called a cultural consultant or content advisor, Wikipedia defines a sensitivity reader as someone who reads a literary work, looking for perceived offensive content, stereotypes, and bias, creating a report for an author or publisher with suggested changes. And that can sound really scary. Unfortunately, a lot of our experience with getting feedback on writing is in the form of teachers marking points off of a report. But I want to assure you that that is not what a good sensitivity reader experience is like, and that is not the experience that I had at all. My sensitivity reader was kind, gave great feedback, and came from a place of assuming good intent on my part. A lot of sensitivity readers are authors themselves and therefore have experience receiving feedback, and so in my experience are really good at finding balance. Your next question is probably whether or not you need a sensitivity reader. This is a difficult question to answer and varies from book to book and author to author. The first thing to ask yourself is whether or not any character in your book belongs to a group that is often portrayed in a stereotypical light. This might be characters of a certain religion, ethnicity, economic standing, disability, gender, and many more. It is also worth investigating whether or not anything in your novel could be considered shorthand or allegory for any of those communities or cultures. For example, elves for indigenous culture, or goblins for the Jewish diaspora. Once you've identified the various points that you might need somebody else's perspective on, you can ask yourself whether or not you have experiences that might mean that you can do your own sensitivity read, so to speak. For example, in my new book, Tales of Mundane Magic Volume 4, pre-order link available now, there are queer characters and a character who is blind in one eye. I am bisexual, so I do feel like I can draw from my own experiences when it comes to my queer characters, and my writing coach is queer as well, and they can cover the characters I can't. But while I don't have perfect vision, I haven't had to deal with the trauma that comes from dealing with blindness in our incredibly vision-focused society, so I knew that I needed a sensitivity reader that could review my work with that approach. There's not a perfect answer to whether or not you need a sensitivity reader, but because you're already asking this question, you're already one step on the journey, so good for you. So how did I find my sensitivity reader? This is something I was really worried about because I know that the publishing community lives on Twitter and I wasn't very active on Twitter anymore. And I really wanted to find someone who was a good match for me and the subject that I needed sensitivity reading on, and I didn't want to just randomly search. Luckily, I started working with the most amazing writing coach ever, and they had a link for me, and I will put it in the description for you. It's a link to a Google form where you fill out your project, what state it's in, and what you need sensitivity reading on. Your answers go into a Google Doc, and then a bunch of sensitivity readers will take a look and see if your project sounds like something that they'd be able to take on. If it matches their experiences and interests, then they'll reach out to you. Not all sensitivity readers are going to be the same, so make sure that you're a good match before you start the sensitivity review process. I did have an email discussion with a sensitivity reader who I ended up not hiring, and I want to share that experience here because I do think it's a good illustration of how to realize whether or not you're a good author-reader match. In their first email with me, they told me things that they felt that I had to change in my book based on my quick descriptions from the form. I'll admit that I was a bit flustered at being told things that I had to change right away, but I wanted to give this reader the benefit of the doubt. I sent a professional response, trying to give more context to what my book was about, and we did have a very productive conversation about tropes that might apply to characters with disabilities in a magical world. The reader was concerned that at the end of the book, magic would suddenly cure the character's blindness, giving the message to the audience that disabilities are something that need to be cured despite it being unrealistic. But even after I assured the prospective sensitivity reader that this was not my intention and nothing like this existed in any draft of any of my books, they still stuck to their initial reaction. And I knew that if I hired them and they went into their critique with this opinion, then I would never be able to get an unbiased account of my work. I respectfully told the sensitivity reader that we didn't seem like a good match, which they were very professional about. Then another prospective reader emailed me, and after some back and forth, I was sure that this was a sensitivity reader for me. She was clearly experienced at critiquing, enjoyed reading modern fantasy like Tales of Mundane Magic, and was going into the edit with an open mind. For my part, I made it clear that I valued whatever feedback she had to give me and that I wasn't just doing this for brownie points. Something to learn from my experience is actually something really important to keep in mind for this entire process. One marginalized person cannot, and should not be burdened to, speak for their entire community. Everyone in a marginalized group is going to have a different opinion on what is or is not okay for you to use in your book. You might be asking, then why should you bother with a sensitivity reader experience at all? Remember, this isn't to get a good grade like you're used to from school. It's all about having productive conversations before you publish your material so that in the event it makes some of your readers uneasy, you'll be better prepared to have these conversations. But anyway, after all that, I had my sensitivity reader. So what happens next? From here, every sensitivity reader is going to have a different process. For mine, before I even officially hired her or signed a contract, she offered to read a sample of my writing to make sure that we were a good fit in terms of style, genre, writing tone, etc. In my opinion, this was a bit above and beyond, but I wasn't going to turn her down. I sent her the climactic story from Tales of Mundane Magic Volume 3, and she was drawn in by the storyline. Her words. With that, we signed the contract for timeline expectations and her hourly rate, and it was off to the races. She suggested having a phone call where we could discuss where I was coming from with the book and what my experiences and thoughts were on blindness. I was able to share what my intentions were for the character and her journey through the book. From there, I sent her volume 4. She read it, wrote up her report, and sent it back to me. So, what was in the report? The report was 11 pages long and very detailed. For every point that my sensitivity reader made about my writing, she cited lines in my book that demonstrated what she was referring to. She also provided me with titles of essays, books, articles, and other references that I could look into to further my understanding of my character, if I so chose. She asked questions about certain choices that I made in my writing that I hadn't thought of relating to blindness. For example, there's a DJ character in one short story who wears sunglasses, and his sunglasses are enchanted and described as menacing. My sensitivity reader pointed out that that description adds to an existing stigma against people who wear sunglasses, and that there's a stereotype that blind people wear sunglasses. So my phrasing was adding to a pre-existing bias that my readers could have. It's not something huge, and in this case, the character that's assuming malice was pretty quickly proven wrong, so my sensitivity reader didn't even suggest I change anything about it. But she still brought it up because this whole experience is about learning about things that could cause harm, and I really appreciated it. All in all, this was an extremely helpful, supportive experience with constructive criticism, and I'm really glad I did it. Okay, I hear you asking, what did it cost? My sensitivity reader's rates were $75 an hour. It took her 8 hours to read 17 stories, take notes, and organize them into a report. So in total, I spent $600, and it was incredibly worth it. Obviously, I can't guarantee this is what you're going to pay, even if you hire the exact same sensitivity reader as me, but I wanted to provide you with an example of what I experienced. So would I do this again? Definitely, yes, 100%. Would I recommend other people do it? It depends. If you're going to self-publish a book and you're wondering if you should get a sensitivity reader to look at it before it goes out in the world, my recommendation would be to do it. There are already a lot of creative works out there that build up stereotypes and validate unconscious bias, and if you're this far in this video, I don't think you're the kind of person that wants to add to that. If you're not putting your book out into the world right away and you're having other people take a look first, it might be worth it to ask them to keep an eye out for anything you might need a sensitivity reader for. If they think that you need one, you probably should go for it. Additionally, before you go to a sensitivity reader, it's important to do due diligence yourself first. People in marginalized groups want to be fairly represented in media, and there are a lot of resources online that can help you learn how to be respectful in your depictions. Once you've done your best effort not to offend, that's when you can go to a professional. It's kind of like picking up your house before a cleaner comes over. It's the kind and ethical thing to do and shows a respect for their time, expertise, and effort. Ultimately, I'm not here to tell you what to do. The decision is up to you. I'm just hoping to help make it a little easier. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have worked with a sensitivity reader, please comment your experiences down below and any resources or references you might have. And the link to pre-order volume 4 is going to be in the description. Like this video, subscribe, notifications on. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again real soon. Cheers!